You're listening to the 3 Feet Radio Show with Ben Carbonaro and Luke Herbert. From our studios come special guests and netball commentary, exclusively on YouTube.
Welcome, listeners, to this latest installment of the 3 Feet Radio Show. I am co-host Luke Herbert, and in our satellite feed we're getting a bit of crossover with a speech from Dwight Eisenhower, which he gave on the eve of the famous D-Day landings, which will be 71 years ago in a couple of days' time.
You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months.
And speaking of D-Day, it's just that for the Magic and the Still as we approach the elimination finals. You know, those teams really have to justify that they made the finals given their winning records. But, you know, before I move to the march of military music, I have to introduce my co-host. How are you doing today, Ben?
G'day, Luke. How are you, mate? It's Ben Carbonaro, by the way, here. Ben Carbonaro reporting for duty, as we would say in war speak. And yes, it's a very exciting time with week 1 of the ANZ Championship finals and Magic and Steel game, because unfortunately, because of their ladder positions, as you discussed, it's not really going to be the most exciting game, Luke.
No, I don't think so. And the Steel and the Magic are on board the troop transports now. And just as, you know, they board the landing craft, what do you think are the strengths of Julie Fitzgerald, the Magic coach?
Yep, this is in the second of the elimination finals. This is in Hamilton on Saturday, two days from now, after we've recorded this show. I think the strengths of the coach Julie Fitzgerald is the fact that she gets the most out of her younger and more experienced players, and I think that's been proven with the likes of Jamie Lee Price and Sam Sinclair, who were very raw at the start of the year.
Absolutely, there were some raw recruits that came to the Magic, and they maybe just got out of basic training if Julie Fitzgerald was lucky. And when you factor that in, I think the Magic, they haven't had a bad year necessarily. It's just, as we alluded to, the fact that they made the finals, but it's not quite as bad as the Steel in their 3 wins, but we will come back to that on a later program, because you and I, we chose to just focus on the elimination finals for this program. So just moving on to the Steel, how do you see the strengths of their coach and their side?
I think Janine Southby, she's had a great year in terms of play development. I'll say great, quite lightly, because obviously you can't have great work from a coach when they've only won 3 games for the year. But the play development, i.e., with players like Shannon Francois, Storm Purvis in defence, Phoenix Carrick, Brooke Lever too. And what we see with the Steel here is very similar to what we've seen with the West Coast Fever, another finalist in recent years, in that they're developing an improving team, but it's not reflected in the win-loss record just yet. But I think, seeing what we've seen so far this year, I think that's certainly good for the next 2 to 3 years long term.
Yeah, and just in terms of key players, I think for the Steel, you've mentioned, you know, quite a few of the key players will be Karaka and Purvis at the defensive end. Lever can be quite handy off the bench if they want to make a tactical change throughout the game. But who else for you, Ben, do you think will be the key soldiers for the Steel?
I would say probably the most key one, although it's probably wrong for me to say this, because people always say, you know, don't focus on shooters. You know, there's 7 players on court, but I think sometimes in this instance you need to. Janielle Fowler-Reid, you know, just since she's come into the competition, she's just like what Romelda Aiken does at the Firebirds. They ping the ball long, she gets it, and she scores the goals, and she takes all the glory.
Yeah, and I think too for the Magic, for the enemy, I think Harton is going to be a key player. You know, when Harton's on song and the ball's getting to her, the Magic, despite the fact they've got some youngsters in the midcourt, they're a hard team to stop when you get into that situation, and that's what they still don't want. And I think Price and Sinclair, you know, depending on who plays in the starting 7, they will be key, how they stand up. And Leanna DeBrain at the defensive end, well, she's been in a mentor and captain role all season and has done a very good job.
She has, and I think also, though, what will be a good thing to see for the Magic, and it will probably will happen, but it won't happen for the full game, will be Casey Corpora coming on either start. I don't think she may start, but I don't think it's highly likely she will, or she'll probably more likely come off the bench. Because at this stage, I think it's all important that the Silver Ferns captain just gets one in her legs leading into the World Champs, and also leading into the couple of international games against Fiji and South Africa. That's the Silver Ferns have before they come over here to Sydney.
Yeah, and I think Casey's return's great. It's great the determination she has shown to come back from injury, and she's been a great role model for up and coming and younger players, and just even adults like myself, really.
And let's now look at the other elimination final, Luke. The New South Wales versus the West Coast Fever, which will be on tomorrow night in Sydney.
Yeah, and we'll just, I think we'll move things about. We'll start with the players again, and they'll be hitting the beaches soon enough. But, just for the Swifts, I think, there's a few key players in there. Jade Clark, if she makes the starting 7, will be one. She'd be in the top 3 mid-quarters in the world. But for you, now that I've shown my bias as a massive Jade Clark fan, for you, Ben, who are the key soldiers that are out on court for the Swifts?
Soldiers, as you say, or cattle, as I might say too, Luke. The likes of the Caitlin Thwaites in goals, her shooting partner there, Susan Pettit, and a recent guest we had on this show is Shani Layton. I think sometimes, there's Julie Coletto down the back there too, but Layton I think is very important to the setup down back there for the Swifts. Very important.
Yeah, and just before I move on, it's worth touching on Thwaites' time in New Zealand at the Pulse, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, what did happen was that the Pulse went and got Irene Van Dyke and sort of blocked the opportunity for Caitlin Thwaites. I mean, no disrespect to Thwaites for going over to New Zealand initially. She needed a change. It was great for her. It helped her get back into the Diamond setup and all that kind of stuff for her career, etc. But I mean, really, drafting a legend like Van Dyke is good for the Pulse. It was, but at the same time too, not good for Thwaites because it blocked her opportunities. But her coming back to Australia and not being in Melbourne, I think, has been really good for her, and she's really enjoyed being in Sydney, and it looks like she will hopefully have a good game tomorrow night for the Swifts.
Yeah, and I think just before we move on, with due respect to Irene, I think Irene was always reaching the end of her playing career, so the Pulse didn't necessarily get such good value when they recruited her. Irene is a wonderful person, but purely in terms of development as a team I'm referring to there. But since we have Military Fever on this show, who do you think are the key players for the West Coast Fever?
Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well trained, well equipped, and battle hardened.
For the West Coast Fever, I think Caitlin Bassett, of course, in the goal shooter position. Nat Medhurst, the goal attack. I guess we've had on this show in defence, Irina Mikiri, and also in the midcourt too. Shea Brown can't be discounted. Sometimes her attitude over the years has been questioned, etc. And she's been on the cusp of national selection a few times across her career. And also Ash Brazel too. I'll tell you, since Ash Brazel's come back and been the Fever captain this year, after she had that injury last year, she has been integral to that midcourt setup for the Fever, hasn't she, Ash Brazel? Oh.
Yeah, I'm very happy for the Fever, no matter what happens. I'm very happy that they've made the finals and that they've had they dropped off a bit there towards the end of the regular season, but otherwise I think they had a very good season, and I think it's good for the ANZ Championship that different teams do emerge as, if not outright title contenders, as stronger sides. And speaking of the Generals, I think Rob Wright for the Swifts, he makes a lot of changes to the Swifts when they're out on court, and I don't think that necessarily helps the side. But what do you think of the West Coast Fever's general?
I think the West Coast Fever's general, i.e., the coach, Stacey Rosman. I think it's a great after the Fever have promised so much for a long time, and she's a former West Coast Fever / Perth Orioles player herself, and has also captained the Fever. But credit must also go where it's due to former Australian coach Norma Plummer. When Norma, I think the Fever in some ways you could say got a bit of a kick up the backside, and we're finally able to realise the potential, and she was able to build the side up a lot too. So yeah, credit where it's due to Norma too, and I'm sure Norma will be watching the final series, no doubt with a bit of a smile on her face, knowing that a lot of the work that she did in building them up has contributed this year to the Fever being where they are.
Oh yes, I think Norma put in a lot of the foundations that the Fever have built upon, so I would give credit to Norma there as well, and I hope she's proud of the work that she did with the Fever. And I think we do we have to move on, and we can't avoid the Magic versus Steel game. And as much as we would have liked to, and it would have, I know you would have been spared the D-Day theme, Ben, and you're probably never going to let me choose themes on this program again. But
I don't know about that, Luke. You're more of the war history buff than what I am.
No, but since we've already covered that Magic Steel game, I think we can just move on to the results.
I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck.
And who do you think's going to win these games, Ben?
As I was saying to you off air, I think it was yesterday, Luke. I will take the Swifts to win, but if it was in Perth, it would be the Fever to win. So Swifts for me, and for you?
Yeah, I think it'll be the Swifts as well. But, don't be surprised if either game goes into overtime.
No, it'd be interesting. Have you got a margin for that game?
For the Swiss Fever? Or
yep.
I reckon
Swiss Fever.
5 and under.
I reckon it could go, like you said, though, I reckon it could come right down. And just for the Magic versus Steel game, your tip, Luke, and your margin?
Oh, this is hard. Look, my heart says Steel and my head says Magic. So, I'll leave that to the listener. But again, I think it'll be another close game. I think, regardless of the result, I think the Steel will want to put in a respectable performance because they don't want to just be seen as a team that kind of just showed up to the finals.
For me, I'll probably take the Magic, but that's purely based on what I saw of them during the home and away season, which I must admit was not a lot. The Steel only winning 3 home and away season games. I mean, it makes a bit of a mockery of the final system, but we can discuss that on another day. But for me, the Magic, and I'll say the Magic, I'd say probably anywhere between 5 to 10 goals. Would you say that's probably a realistic margin, Luke, or do you think more?
Oh, ouch, because I've got to move away from my heart there. I think that's probably about right, Ben. I think a lot will depend on the error rate they still have. If they get the turnovers and they can score off them, then you are getting them close to either winning or the 3 to 5 goal margin.
And let's not forget either is we've got the conference finals coming up. The Queensland Firebirds will play the winner of the Swifts v Fever elimination final in Brisbane on Sunday, and on Monday night, it's the Northern Mystics taking on the winner of the Magic versus Steel elimination final.
Yes, and, there isn't much space between, the elimination finals and the conference finals. You almost have a longer stay there, and I'm sure that Ben's absolutely cringing at that other D-Day reference, and I think that's about it before Ben is going to absolutely throw some hot coffee at me in the studio.
No, I wouldn't do that, Luke. I'm sure we don't want internal fracas on the 3 Feet Radio Show, do we?
No, there's enough landmines out there that the ANZ Championship has provided with us.
Most certainly.
Right, thank you for joining us, listeners.
You've been listening to the 3 Feet Radio Show with Ben Carbonaro and Luke Herbert. Tune in next time for more special guests and netball commentary exclusively on YouTube.